As the Great Crusade unfolded across the galaxy, mounting concerns grew regarding the utilization of psychic sorcery by various agents and warriors within the Imperium. The Emperor, being the most potent human psyker to ever exist, harbored deep reservations about the increasing prevalence of the mutant psyker gene within the human population. The Emperor held a profound belief that the majority of humanity had not yet reached the required level of physical and spiritual evolution to safely wield the immense power of the warp. He was acutely aware of the temptations offered by the malevolent entities lurking within the warp. As the Imperial forces ventured forth, they found themselves increasingly confronted by populations under the sway of enigmatic forces and mysterious figures known as sorcerers. These individuals, often associated with the nefarious chaos cults, harnessed psychic powers granted by demonic entities from the warp. Some of these powers bore a striking resemblance to those employed by the Thousand Sons Legion, led by the charismatic Primarch Magnus the Red. The utilization of sorcery provoked intense disapproval within the Imperium. Leading the opposition were figures like Primarch Mortarion of the Death Guard Legion and Leman Russ of the Space Wolves Legion. To them, any form of warfare that relied on psychic abilities rather than straightforward physical combat was considered dishonorable. The Space Wolves, in particular, found the Thousand Sons' embrace of sorcery deeply distasteful. The debates within the Imperium intensified to the point where they posed a threat to the unity and stability of the burgeoning Imperium. In response, the Emperor himself called for an imperial conclave to address this critical issue. The conclave took place on the world of Nikaea, with the Emperor presiding as the ultimate authority, seated high above the vast dais in an ancient amphitheater that accommodated tens of thousands of participants. The conclave brought together proponents on both sides of the issue. The proponents of regulation, represented by witch hunters such as the Sisters of Silence, presented their case by recounting a litany of human suffering at the hands of sorcerers who had fallen into the clutches of chaos. They also cited instances of gibbering mutants who had lost their humanity and power, hungry individuals who wielded their psychic gifts for dark purposes. The audience was vividly reminded of the destructive force uncontrolled and demon-possessed psykers had unleashed during the turbulent times of the Age of Strife. On the opposing side was Primarch Magnus the Red, an influential advocate for the continuation of psychic powers. He asserted that knowledge itself was neutral and that the pursuit of knowledge, no matter how intricate or enigmatic, was never inherently wrong. What mattered was whether the seeker of knowledge remained its master, using it to serve humanity rather than becoming a pawn in its intricate game. Magnus passionately argued that his Thousand Sons Legion had not only mastered sorcery, but had transcended its limitations, demonstrating their potential to benefit humanity and the Imperium. He implored the Emperor not to forbid the use of psychic abilities, but to contribute to further research into their application, thereby harnessing their potential for the greater good. Magnus's charismatic appeal held sway over many participants at the Council of Nikaea, leading to heightened divisions and tensions. While the witch hunters possessed valid reasons for their anti-psyker stance, they struggled to match the persuasiveness of Magnus's arguments. At this pivotal juncture, a group of Space Marine librarians approached the dais. Their presence drew the Emperor's attention, and a hushed silence settled over the assembly. Among these librarians were some of the most skilled and knowledgeable within the Space Marine legions. They formed a semicircle around the dais, symbolizing their collective voice, with a young librarian epistolary chosen to speak on their behalf. This librarian epistolary, himself a psyker, proposed that psykers were akin to gifted athletes, individuals with intrinsic talent requiring careful nurturing. He emphasized that psykers were not inherently evil. Rather, they were tools that, like any others, could be wielded for good or ill. In stark contrast, sorcery delved into the secrets of the warp and dealt with powers that required negotiations with the malevolent entities dwelling within it. This path was fraught with uncertainty, for no one could be certain who or what truly benefited from such pacts. The librarians recommended that all psykers be subjected to a rigorous Imperium-controlled education and training with the explicit purpose of using their abilities to serve humanity. The practice of sorcery, however, was to be vehemently outlawed, deemed an unforgivable offense against humanity and the gravest form of heresy. The Council of Nikaea also served as the trial of Magnus the Red, who stood accused of sorcery and of introducing sorcerous practices to the Space Marine legions through the establishment of the Librarius. As evidence of Magnus's continued involvement in sorcery came to light, the Emperor's judgment grew increasingly severe. The Emperor's anger, stemming from his son's defiance and suspected dalliance with forbidden psychic sorcery, factored significantly into the ruling. The outcome of the Council of Nikaea led to the prohibition of psykers within most Space Marine legions. The Emperor ordered the closure of Librarius departments and mandated that existing Space Marine librarians relinquish their psychic abilities, returning to their roles as line warriors. In response to these rulings, the Imperium created a new role within the Space Marine legions, the Space Marine Chaplain. These chaplains were entrusted with upholding the imperial truth and preserving the unwavering dedication and loyalty of Astartes legions to the Emperor's commands. The Emperor once again commanded Magnus to relinquish the practice of sorcery, the incantations, and all pursuits related to arcane knowledge. Naturally, Magnus resisted this directive, vehemently opposing the decision taken at Nikaea. However, he ultimately yielded to his father, the Emperor, even though the machinations of the ruinous powers would ultimately lead Magnus the Red and his 1,000 sons down a much darker path.